You absolutely own some of the books on the Hot 10 this week. This is one of the most stunning Hot 10 lists we've covered all year long because there's only about $30,000 worth of sales. However, it's across over 75 different transactions. What does that mean?
We're talking affordability. We're talking about ground level purchases here where people are just getting into these books. Almost half the list, like you mentioned, is going to be stuff we haven't seen all year.
Like and subscribe. And at the list at number 10, one of my favorite horror classics of all time. Neil Adams on Tomb of Dracula, issue number 1. The first appearance of Dracula in a comic book post the vanquishing of the Comics Code Authority.
This is the first book we're discussing, but the one I'm most excited about. To see Bronze Age horror, which if you don't understand and respect it, let me tell you, some of the best art in this time frame came from the Bronze Age horror, whether it's DC horror or Marvel. So seeing a book when you're seeing Golden Age titles in horror exploding for years now, and people coming in at that level of investment and just respecting horror as the entry level in the Golden Age, it's also a great way to get into the Bronze Age. With affordable books like this, and many others that you see in all horror titles for the 70s, you have to be excited to see this book on this list. A 6.5 sold for $280. That's up 9%. A 7.0 is up 18%. The 8.0 up 1%. And the 9.0 is up 9% for $680. We saw an explosion of this book on the census. Just 3 years ago, there was about 13 9.8s. So you got to be careful with Bronze Age because now it's up to 84 in just a matter of years. And that says a lot because, like I mentioned, you need to be careful because we don't really know how many copies are out there that haven't been graded.
This just means that Bronze Age horror has been gone undervalued and overlooked for way too long. And right now, with the focus on Ghost Rider, the focus on Blade, even if the movie was tabled, Midnight Sun spec, right now, it's the time to seriously consider picking up raw, high-grade copies of the occult, of the supernatural.
And if you want to stay up to date on books like that and many others, make sure to check out the app Key Collector, where you can put in a code TOM101 to get a free 2-week subscription.
That's right. You support the show, and you can learn about all the important funny books, specifically Bronze Age horror, and the movies that are spiking the comics are organized for you, so you can just get a full list of the comics that you should be focusing in on, especially while you're on the hunt. Moving on to number 9 on the list, Uncanny X-Men 266, first appearance of Remy LeBeau. Gambit is not coming off the list, and I suspect it's because Deadpool Wolverine has gone to streaming and is shortly going to be available on Disney Plus soon, providing another opportunity for people to watch it time and time again. And people are really hoping that Channing Tatum reprises the role in the future, pushing this book up, one of the very few to survive post-movie hype. And the book is still selling. You can get a 9.4 for $203, up 7%. The 9.6 sold for $250, up 5%. And a newsstand 9.6 sold for $401. That's an increase of 10%. This is the 12th time that Gambit's landed on the Hot 10 this year alone. It started prior to Deadpool Wolverine and has maintained consistency ever since. But will that be the same for the next book on the list? At number 8, Venom number 3, the first appearance of Null.
Over $2,000 were spent with 11 sales above the 12-month average. And this book has fallen on this list. We've seen it week after week on here, but it went from spot number 4 to spot number 8. Will it be here next week? I think it will be. But let's look at some of these numbers here. SDCC Stegman variant 9.8 sold for $170. That's up 15%. The 9.8. 6 copies outsold the 12-month average, with one up 21% for $260. The third printing 9.8 sold for $350. That's up 3%.
The book has definitely fallen down on the list because there's not a whole lot of sales to report on above the 12-month average, largely because people mostly bought them during the movie hype. So keep an eye out on this book because Null seemingly isn't going anywhere. We have Peter Parker possibly acquiring the symbiote in the future, and I won't get into spoilers with Venom, but clearly there's more to be told of the story of probably Eddie Brock, but for sure the Venom symbiote. Now, one other thing that's very intriguing is that there are so many 9.8 purchases of this book. This isn't just 3 sales. No, 6 9.8s means that people believe that this character could potentially hold up the Sony universe, regardless of what most people's assessment of the quality of these movies has been.
Number 7, Star Wars number 1. Somebody overpaid for a 9.8 big time.
It makes sense, though. kind of.
Yeah, you can say that because stuff does happen. Sometimes people just commit to a book because this book specifically is more than just a comic book for comic collectors. This transcends the hobby. It crosses over because Star Wars interest is more than just a comic book. It's film, it's toys, it's just generational. So when you have 6 sales above the 12-month average go for $6,400 plus, you're not going to be shocked. And to see it on this list, especially with the buzz of a new show that I'm actually really digging because they have messed up our characters enough.
We got the first look of the new trailer, Skeleton Crew, on Disney Plus, 8 episodes. You guys know I'm a Trekkie, but I will say that I have enjoyed Star Wars more and more over time, but it can get a little dry. You know, we're following some old dude in the plains of Tatooine half the time, and this right here is an opportunity to, I don't know, inject some excitement, some youthfulness into the show. I'm getting some straight up Stranger Things vibes.
I'm not sure how much effect this truly has on the comic. I really don't. Maybe it's just coincidental it's here. But just to speak on the show, I like it because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm tired of them messing up the characters we've fallen in love with and introducing something new. I can only imagine as a child coming across a starship. I mean, we're living in a galaxy universe where there's just apparently ships crashed everywhere. So imagine being a child and finding something. And we've seen this in the 80s and the 90s, kids finding something glorious and then going on this adventure journey. So now we're seeing it in a Star Wars universe, which is going to be, I think, really, really fun.
The 7.0 is up 11%, going for 206. The 9.4 is up 1%, going for 500. The 9.8, we had to check because it is a year high, but we're reporting a sale of $4,800, which on one end is like, damn, isn't Star Wars 1 and a 9.8 got to be close to a $5,000 book? I bet that's what that person thought, but that's up 40%. This book's been trending near the $3,000 marker all year. Hell, someone picked one up for $2,200 in 2024.
Like many Bronze Age books, and I've touched on this already with the Tomb of Dracula, this is 1977. That's further than Tomb of Dracula, which was 72. And people were picking up many, many copies then. So just imagine 5 years later, they're buying even more and putting them away. We don't really know how many copies are out there, still raw. And I would expect, since we already have 934 9/8, to see that number grow. So this book isn't extremely rare. Don't overpay. Don't be that 40% overmarket purchaser. Look at this book around, really, if you want a good deal in this climate, if you can get it for $2,800, you're probably winning. And it's probably going to be even less than that, potentially, maybe in a year or so.
Number 6 on the list for the first time ever, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just welcome Something is Killing the Children, number 1, to the Hot 10. James Tynion the Fourth Brilliance. This is one of the best modern comic books of our generation from one of the hottest, if not the hottest writer in the world right now. Donnie, come back. But this comic book has landed on the Hot 10, and I'm so thrilled about it because every time I see 9.8 prices, I can't commit because I can't ever tell because it's so expensive, but also it feels right because it's such a great book. We have the second printing 9.8 going for $320. That's up 29%. The sixth printing 9.8 sold for $550. That's up 20%. That's a year high. And the 9.8 first printing, 3 copies outsold the 12-month average over this last week. The highest for $750, up 23%. We've known quite a while that this has been picked up, Netflix optioned, and that James Tynion has been actively working with producers. Apparently, the producers from the Netflix series Dark is attached, and there was a recent interview that James Tynion did that went over a bunch of his horror work because, you know, it's like Halloween time, you know, over this last week. And Boom Studios specifically brought up that Sick Tick was optioned, you know, trying to give some boost to their properties to showcase that there's stuff happening. And that reminder spiked this book up. Well-deserved. I hope to see this book again on this list.
5, Young Avengers number 1. This was rumored to be the giant-size X-Men number 1 for this generation.
Dude, I said that, man.
Yeah,
I still believe it. There's potential.
There is potential, but I think we're too busy trying to get immediate responses and think that things are going to explode. This is going to have to be a slow build. Okay, because potentially it's there. We have the youth. We have the characters that people are really excited about. And we already have one on the screen when we're seeing Wiccan. And spoiler alert, I did watch the final finale of Agatha. There's more to come. All right, we have a brother coming. So this universe is growing. So right now, I'm not sure where the numbers are at their bottom or at their peak yet. So let's take a look at what we got here. We have a director's cut 9/8 that sold up 16% for $150. The 9/8 sold for $252. That's just up 1%. But we had a year high sale of the Wizard World LA 9.8, so for $451. That's up 15%. Now, this book was so high at one point, and both of us have experience in owning it at its peak. But right now, it sounds pretty reasonable and affordable.
Yo, Kate Bishop's already been on the screen. Hulkling was cast recently. Is anyone going to be surprised if we see Iron Lad with the entire Kang narrative that they were building up way back when? I mean, this right here is so low on a multi-key book that is kind of tough to acquire in high grade.
The fact this is the first time on the list this year maybe speaks volumes to what people are starting to now realize price-wise how affordable this book is for a potential big key. I mean, $250 for a 9/8 of a book that has potential growth isn't a large investment for a lot of people. It is for some, and I get it. But if you're going to take a risk and put money into something that you think is going to be further down the road in value, this is not a bad decision to make.
One thing of note is that Wizard World 9/8, when people are starting to purchase these scarcer variants for the top of the market for the entire year, and this isn't the only one on this list, stay tuned, it shows a optimism for the title to grow long term, just like the next book on the list. But before I get there, if you want to support the show directly, join the mystery mail call. One per box. I have an Adi Granov Rogue cover that is just beautiful. Saw it in person just this last week after it showed up, and it's going out to every single member of the community. A Trinity Comics New York City Comic Con exclusive that's currently going for more than the box costs. Go to comictom.com. We changed the website, and take a look at what we got there. We make this video every week. We've been doing it for over 4 years straight without skipping a beat. The trending video has been coming out weekly every week for over 6 years. Let's keep it going. Support the show while we move on to number 4 on the list with Amazing Spider-Man 252, the first appearance of the black suit and ASM continuity, the AF-15 homage. And this book is spiking because of Null and what's going on with the symbiotes, but also what's going on with Spider-Man 4. So this crosses the Sonyverse and the greater MCU universe and has become prime and one of the hottest books in the world this year.
Sometimes there's signs in the marketplace that lets you know a book is heating up or something in demand. And one of those signs is when foreign and Canadian price variants start to sell. We had a Canadian price variant 9.4 sell 4% higher for $267. The newsstand 9.4 is up 17% for a $300 sale. We didn't just see that one. We saw 4 other 9.4 newsstand sell. You don't put your money in a book that's a newsstand unless you have confidence that that book is an important book to put your money into. We saw a 9.6 sell for $1 more than the 12-month average, which just lets us know and gives us more confidence that that's about where the book should be selling for in that grade. Now, this is where you need to be a little cautious because we're seeing a race to grading on this book. We saw 60 new copies in the last 3 weeks get submitted for grading at CGC. And with 1,800 plus copies and a 9.8 already, expect this book to stay where it is and maybe even become a little bit more affordable.
That census count is leading me to believe why this book at a 9.8 is going for around $1,000, which is about $150 down when you compare it to the recent 12-month average. It's looking better and better, but be cautious. Now, I know I already hit you with the key collector plug, and I try not to spam you too much, the mail call, support the show, et cetera, but I have to do my job. I made a comic book with one of my best friends, Fire Guy Ryan. It's called Crashdown. And the graphic novel, which includes the entire 4-issue series, issue 4 is like 1.5. It's like a one-shot size issue finale. There's going to be backups and like behind-the-scenes stuff in the graphic novel, which is headed to FOC November 17th. So if you want to read the whole story that we put a lot of time and effort into with living horror legend Ben Templesmith, our editor is the writer of American Psycho. I would greatly appreciate it if you hit up your LCS, support your shop, and pick up the graphic novel of Crashdown.
And here at 3 is a book we haven't talked about on any of our lists for over a year and a half. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 238 in at number 3. 7 sales above the 12-month average for $3,500. when you look at the rest of this list, that's actually pretty strong for most of these books.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of was what's going on with this key? I mean, this is the first appearance of Hobgoblin. Make sure that you have it complete because it was included with temporary tattoos with a Z. I don't know. It's cool. Make sure to get the tattoos, though, because this book is worthless without that. And I'll start you off with a Canadian price variant to kind of add to what you were talking about before, Jeff. You don't just buy a 9.2 for above the 12-month average of 22% for $400 unless something is cooking. The 9.2 direct went for $405, up 18%. The 9.4 went for $422, up 4%. And the 9.8 sold for $1,500, up 3%. The 12-month average was right around $1,400. So unlike a lot of books on this list, this book not only is trending, not only selling aggressively, it's selling above the average high.
Buckle up because Spider Spec is specking hard, and rightfully so because this is one of the most loved characters in the MCU for just about everybody. And this book deserves to be in your collection anyway because it's one of the more important books for the time frame of this hobby. But with Spider-Man 4 buzz of all types of characters, and now the Hobgoblin, which we've thought for maybe a few years now is going to happen with Ned Leeds transitioning into a villain. To see this book here is no surprise whatsoever.
Tom Holland confirmed that production begins with Spider-Man 4 in 2025, leading us to believe it's going to come out in 2026. Leaks right now, but it's so loose. Doom may show up. Vulture may show up. As you mentioned, Hobgoblin makes sense. Last week, we were talking about ASM number 5, first Spider-Man Doom meetup. I think you're right. 2025 leading into 2026 with one of the strongest MCU movies and heroes being prime for speculation means get your ASM ready. You may want to hold is what I'm saying.
Have you subscribed to the video yet? Number 2, Incredible Hulk 340. 8 sales above the 12-month average for $2,000 spent.
The 9.4 is up 23%, going for $299. The newsstand 9.4 is going for $317, up 13%, and the 9.6 hit $500, up 42%. One of the best-selling, most wanted, not just McFarlane covers, but key books because of the cover, post-Deadpool Wolverine.
While we're discussing Todd, because the Todd effect is massive on that book, we also need to talk about Spawn 357 for New York Comic Con, a 2024 retailer incentive limited to 300 copies. Lights up eBay with sales exceeding $400. And the Spawn 357 New York Comic Con exclusive from Peach Momoko, which was one of the hottest books there and sold out pretty freaking quickly, that you could buy unsigned for $40 and $60 signed, is averaging $250 plus on eBay alone.
There were multiple Hulk 340 homages. There was a Mexican foil that was released. I mean, NYCC was taken over by Todd McFarlane. If you were there seeing that line, I saw videos, you were actually there. It was bananas, and it makes sense why there's a lot of focus on McFarlane right now.
While we're discussing this book, coincidentally, on the 17th with the FOC release of Crashdown is also the FOC release of the 3D version of Incredible Hulk 340.
So hit up your LCS and stay tuned to the very end of this video because I have one of the biggest announcements I've ever made on this channel coming. I'm doing something crazy, but we'll tell you about that in a second. After we talk about the hottest book in the world, number 1 on the list, Marvel Superhero Secret Wars, issue number 8. Easily the most wanted comic book right now in the community.
Almost $3,000 in sales amongst 12 books this week. We had the 9.0 sell for $250. That's up 37% with a year-high sale. The 9.2 is up 28% for $243. The Canadian price variant, we talked about Canadian price variants. The 9.4 is up 5% for a $320 sale. The 9.6 up 16%, and the 9.8 up 10%. Those are big percentages, double point percentages for every single one of those reported.
We've talked about the null interest. We've talked about ASM 252 on this very list. It's very much the same thing going on, but they just doubled down. Hearing that Spider-Man 4 is now in the distance, knowing that we're going to be getting Secret Wars very soon as one of the big endgame level movies, it would make sense why people are now looking at the origin of where this occurrence took place, when Peter Parker donned that alien costume for the very first time.
For me to surmise this list, I'm seeing for the next year Bronze Age horror, and basically any Rogues Gallery characters for Spider-Man is potentially on the table. And right now with the down market like it is, and I predict personally in about 3 years, This market is going to be escalating again in such a positive fashion and stability that we're going to be kicking ourselves for probably not picking up more in a slump like we see now.
Let Jeff know in the comment section below if you agree with him and where else are you specking right now. And join me this coming Tuesday with Davis Rider Comics in Denver on Whatnot. We were invited, the very first people to ever be invited to fly out to Denver to join J. Scott Campbell on the app in his warehouse for a warehouse stream. And they're giving us like carte blanche. Is that the word? I don't even know. They got statues, prints, AP stuff, like sold out exclusives, stuff from the vault that they're going to be giving us access to release to the public for the first time ever on Whatnot. And if you use the link in the description, you get to use a $15 credit on your first purchase. Join us. We need your support. This is a really big deal for us. I'm going to be chilling with J. Scott Campbell, baby.
This is an extremely special event. You just expressed how this has not happened for anyone. And the fact that you're going to go down there and see one of the most relevant artists and somebody who is known for variant covers, that says something special about their ability and skill, that they are held to variant covers that they know people are going to want and in demand. So to get that opportunity, I'm excited to see what content you put out because I know it's going to be interesting. I know it's going to be fun. It's going to be dynamic. And I'm here for it. Geek responsibly.
Enough said.